If you've been feeling stressed, overwhelmed, and totally stuck, especially if you're trying to change your health, your career, or the direction of your life, this episode is for you. So what feels like a motivation problem is actually a physiology problem. Today, I'm breaking down the science of why your body gets stuck in stress and survival mode and sharing the 7 steps to reset your system so that you can feel calm and clear and ready for your next step. Welcome back to Your Inner Landscape. I'm Jackie, and today we're diving into something that so many of us feel but rarely understand. Why your body gets stuck in stress and survival mode and what it actually takes to shift out of that state. So you might notice this in your health. You might notice this in your career. You might notice it when you're trying to make a big pivot in your life, but feel too overwhelmed or foggy to actually take the next action step. And here's the part that almost nobody teaches us, which is you can't change your life or your health or anything for that matter when your physiology is in survival mode. Your brain can't think clearly. Your decisions feel impossible. Your body is wired and tense and tired or flat, and everything feels harder than it should. So in today's episode, I'm breaking down the actual science behind why you get stuck in stress mode, what's happening to your cells, your hormones, and your nervous system. And then we're going to walk through the 7 steps to reset your system. And these 7 steps are practical. They're physiological things in your body that it needs in order to shift out of this survival mode and into regulation and balance. Because when your system resets, everything opens, everything's easier. Our clarity returns, our creativity comes back, our intuition sharpens, the energy is steadies, right? Our gut health recalibrates and comes into balance. Our hormones regulate, and the direction that you've been trying to figure out, it starts to become really clear. So let's just start out with what is actually happening underneath the overwhelm, underneath the stress. Let's just understand what the stress response is. So let's take a step back and just tune into what's actually going on. So modern day exhaustion is so common, right? We are encouraged to do more, perform better, work harder, stay fit, never rest. This is what's encouraged, right? To grit and bear it. And we're expected to do all the things all the time. And that's exhausting, right? We have an overload of this societal pressure, environmental toxins, diets lacking in nutrients, and personal trauma. And all of this leads to burnout with a dysregulated stress response from a chronically activated HPA axis. So this leads us to depletion and exhaustion and low motivation and disease and compromised gut health. So this is always where I start with everyone, and this is the beginning of the Design Your Life framework, and this is the beginning of where we start with each and every one of my clients, because we have to understand this very valuable and the most important foundation, right? So everything starts with our nervous system, and we all tend to overlook it because we're just stuck in this societal pressure of this doing more, performing better, So we're going to just briefly go over what the stress response is, what are the stressors, and what's contributing to your stress bucket, and why it's so important to support this piece of our health. And after that, we're going to talk about how we bring this all into balance. So we're going to just start with the big picture here. What is the stress response? The stress response is our body's survival system. It's always scanning our environment to see if there's a threat or a stressor. And it's not necessarily bad. It keeps us alive, right? So the problem isn't stress. The problem is when we stay stuck in that stress response. And our body is designed to turn stress on when it needs to, and then the moment the threat passes, it turns it off. So it's like our body's alarm system, right? It turns on when we need energy or focus or protection, and then it turns off again when things settle down. So with this, we're just going to talk about what exactly the nervous system is. It's thrown around so much on the internet and because everyone's talking about stress. So the nervous system is basically the communication network of our body, and it runs everything from stress to digestion to mood, sleep, focus, energy, decisions, and it's always scanning the environment and asking, are we safe or not? So our nervous system is like a operating system behind everything that you think and feel. And it decides whether we have access to this feeling of calm and clarity and digestion and healing and nourishment and creativity, or are we, is there a threat present and we need to focus and run away? So this is our autonomic nervous system. All this stuff is happening automatically. And so we've got from there, right, this branches into two parts. We've got the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. So the sympathetic nervous system, which is stress mode, this is our fight, flight, and freeze system. And it activates during a stress or a perceived threat. And it gives us energy and focus and alertness. It sends the blood to the exterior to fuel muscles, and it raises our heart rate. It brings up cortisol and adrenaline. It shuts down digestion. It shuts down reproduction. It shuts down creativity. And it's amazing for specific moments. Like when I used to ski competitively, it was like, yeah, being in stress mode when you're on top of the mountain is a good thing because it helps you focus, gives you energy and alertness. But it's not always meant to be on. So our sympathetic state of the nervous system, it's like our, green light gas pedal. And it gets you through challenges and hard times. But if it gets stuck on, we burn out, right? So if we've got deadlines or arguments or low blood sugar, or we're scrolling at night, or we don't have enough fuel, this is all gas pedal on. So you can see how this leads to burnout. And then we have the second part of the autonomic nervous system, and that is our calming mode. That is rest, digest, regulate, connection, creativity, intuition. And this is the state that supports healing and digestion and clarity and decision making. So if you're having a hard time making decisions, just ask yourself, are you running around super busy? Because sometimes we just are always in a stress state and we can't think clearly to make a really solid decision. This state lowers our cortisol. It helps us sleep. It helps us lose weight. It helps us to process our emotions. This is where our intuition and our big picture thinking lives. And this is the state that's required for change. So you can think of this rest and digest mode, or the parasympathetic system here, as the brake pedal, as the pause. It slows down your body so you can repair and nourish, and you can actually think clearly and you can heal. And this is why in all of my frameworks, everything I do with my clients, in my sessions, in my live events, we always start with the pause so that we can tap into the parasympathetic state, because this is where the beautiful magic happens when we're in this calm state. It helps us to think clearly. So the real problem is when we get stuck in the sympathetic state. Ideally, we're switching between these two states effortlessly. And that's when problems arise, is when we just get stuck in the sympathetic. So the thing that I'm sure you're aware of is, or maybe you're starting to understand through listening to this, is our modern life, it overstimulates the gas pedal, right? And it understimulates the parasympathetic state. So chronic stress is chronic sympathetic activation. So what happens is the nervous system kind of forgets how to shift gears, and this is where we start to feel overwhelmed or foggy or anxious, and we can't heal. We feel like we're doing everything wrong. We can become unmotivated or reactive. So if you're feeling very reactive in conversations to anything that's thrown at you, you might be stuck in a parasympathetic or in a sympathetic state. If you're unable to pivot your life, if you're unable to heal, if you've got gut issues, the list goes on. So, and it's the big one too, is if you're just not able to relax, you are probably stuck in a sympathetic state. And it's important to note here that you are not stuck because you're lazy or unmotivated. You are stuck because your nervous system is stuck in stress mode. And that's why today we're going to go through the 7 steps of understanding how to get you out of this. So whether you are trying to heal your gut, if you're struggling with hormonal stuff, if you are trying to pivot your life, or you're trying to plan your future, or you're trying to have babies, it's all super important to figure out what's going on with you and why are you stuck in survival mode? Because if you are, it's like thinking that there's a tiger nearby. It's really hard to focus if there's like this thing with big fangs hanging out, looking over your shoulder, drooling. So now that you understand the two parts of your autonomic nervous system and why the stress response gets stuck on, let's walk through each of the 7 steps that help your system reset. So these 7 things are what your body actually needs to downshift and pause and step out of survival mode into clarity again. So step 1 to resetting your system is fueling the body. So we got to look at our food and blood sugar stability. So no matter if you are working on manifesting anything that you want or getting super healthy using a holistic approach, we have to start here with this physiology. So when you go too long without eating, your blood sugar drops. And when your blood sugar drops, this is an emergency to the brain. And this is one of the fastest ways to activate your stress response because your body needs fuel to function. So when our blood sugar drops, your body releases cortisol and adrenaline to bring your blood sugar back up. And this keeps you in a sympathetic stress mode. I mean, one of the most simple, basic things that I use with every single person, and everyone is like, wow, I feel so much better. I have so much more energy. I can think clearer, is when we eat breakfast within 30 minutes to an hour of waking. I mean, the amazing feedback I've gotten just from that one thing over the last 6 years is magical. And that's because we're setting up our day for blood sugar stability, which makes us feel a calm mood, a steady energy. It helps us to function clearly because we are not in survival mode. So if you ever feel shaky or anxious or overwhelmed before lunch, that's not your personality. That's not a defect. That's just your body operating with low fuel, and it's triggering a stress mode. So make sure you eat your protein, make sure you eat your fats and your fiber, make sure you're not just eating naked carbs, and you will be setting yourself up for success, eating 3 meals a day, getting in snacks if you need it. If you're super active, you need carbs. I see so many active women not eating enough fuel for their exercise. So if you're surfing or biking or skiing or skinning, whatever, you need fuel. And so make sure that you are fueling effectively. So moving on to the next one, step 2, this is minerals. So we need electrolytes and nervous system support through our minerals. The truth is, your body cannot handle stress very well if your minerals are low and depleted. Not because you're doing anything wrong, but because minerals are like the basic foundation and equipment that your stress system needs to function. So let's break it down super clearly. Your stress system, like your adrenals, to make the adrenals, to produce the stress response, all of it, we need minerals. We need sodium, potassium, magnesium, we need zinc. We need the balance of all these minerals working together to actually mount a healthy stress response. And when we're in a chronic stress response and in this sympathetic state, we actually are burning through heaps of, even sodium, potassium, magnesium. And so you can see how we would run out of our minerals really quickly. And we need to get our minerals from our food and our water. And a lot of our food and water is very deplete in minerals. So we need these basic foundational tools and fuel, minerals, to mount a healthy stress response. And minerals, they play a huge role in regulating this whole system because they control nerve signaling and adrenal hormone production and blood sugar stability. And when minerals like sodium and potassium and magnesium are low, the nervous system becomes more reactive and cortisol output becomes harder to regulate, and the body, it then struggles to shift out of this fight or flight response. And if you remember earlier how I was saying a healthy body switches between fight or flight and rest and digest easily. So when we have wonky minerals and low resources, this makes it harder for the body to shift out of the stress mode. And research shows that electrolyte balance directly influences the HPA axis activity, which is the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal system, which is, we can just call it the stress response. And this is why low minerals make everyday stressors feel bigger than they actually are. It's a bit like trying to ski with dull edges or a surfboard without wax. Nothing in your environment has changed, but you don't have the resources to respond appropriately or smoothly or cleanly or as best as you could. So when we restore our minerals, this gives our system the capacity to handle stress without tipping into overwhelm and into burnout. It's just you then have the basic fuel and resources to function and operate this between these two states of the autonomic nervous system. And this is why I love hair tissue mineral analysis, and I bring it in as an option for anyone who does my Design Your Life program, because if you are working on a big pivot or a big change in your life and you get stuck in this chronic sympathetic state, we need to address the physical body. We need to make sure that you have adequate minerals to actually drop into this parasympathetic state so that you can start to design your life and create the future that you want in a healthy, holistic way. So I love hair tissue mineral analysis for this, because we need to be able to drop into this parasympathetic state no matter if we are working on stepping into a future that feels big and scary or we're trying to heal our gut. Everything comes down to having a healthy stress response and being able to tap into a parasympathetic state, which when we balance our minerals, this becomes so much easier. And once your body has the mineral it needs, the next layer is your mindset and your subconscious patterns, because your brain doesn't distinguish between real danger and imagined danger, which means that certain thoughts can activate the stress system the same way a physical threat would. So old beliefs like I'm behind, or I can't keep up, or I'm not good enough, or I'm not smart sends continuous danger signals that keep your HPA axis switched on. So even if nothing around you is stressful, old patterns can keep your body acting like it is. So closing out, step 2 is minerals, right? We need adequate minerals to actually activate the physiological response in the body. And also our stress response deplete minerals. So it's really important to, I think, modern day, test your minerals, see what's going on, and then work on that piece of the physical body. And then moving into step 3, we need to work on what's going on with what are we telling ourselves? How are we perceiving the world? So step 3 is our mindset and our subconscious patterns, our subconscious programs. What are you making the world believe? What are you perceiving everything to be? Because your thoughts and subconscious patterns directly influence your stress response, because again, the body doesn't distinguish between a real threat and a perceived one. So when you have those underlying beliefs like I'm not doing enough, or something's wrong, or I'm always getting it wrong, or I'm not far enough in my career, or I'm ugly, I'm fat. The brain interprets those thoughts as danger signals and activates the same pathways used for physical stress. And so all of this increases cortisol, and it's like this silent thing that's happening that no one's really working on when they're working on whether it's manifesting whatever they want or if they're working on becoming healthy, because it's like this silent thing that you can't totally see because it is happening in the unconscious mind. And these thoughts or these negative beliefs, they increase cortisol and tighten the nervous system and keep you in a sympathetic state. This was such a huge healing point for me when I started learning about the underlying systems that are driving everything that I do, because it was a huge reason why I was stuck in survival mode. And so even if your life seems calm, but underneath, the old patterns can be keeping this stress response switched on in a silent way. And this part of healing is so powerful because everything that we are making, like how we see and perceive the world, comes from our subconscious. And so it's something I'm weaving into all of my frameworks and all of my work, especially in my Design Your Life program, where we actually focus specifically on the mindset piece, because it has such a big ripple effect on our health and our healing and our pivots and our change in our life. Because what this work does is it makes us feel internally safe. And when we feel internally safe, we can tap into that parasympathetic state where we access our intuition and our creativity, and that calm state where we can actually heal and regulate our gut and our hormones and everything. Everything happens from our calm state of the nervous system. And one of the most powerful and effective ways is to integrate this step number 3, which is mindset and subconscious work. So when we work on our, step 1 is balancing our blood sugar, fueling the body. Step 2 is working on our minerals. Then we are working on tapping into awareness of what is going on with my internal world. What's going on with my thoughts and my mindset, and what am I telling myself about myself, right? How are you speaking to yourself internally? So next we move on to step number 4 of how to reset your nervous system, and that is circadian rhythm with light and sleep. Your circadian rhythm is your body's internal clock, and it has a huge impact on your stress response because light in the morning, it literally signals the body to increase cortisol, right? So light in the morning signals to your brain that it's time to release cortisol and raise cortisol so that you get up and go in the morning, right? This is a healthy and steady thing that we want to happen every single day. We want our cortisol to rise, and then we want it to taper off as the day goes on. And that's when we have the opposite. We've got melatonin that secretes and is released when we have the darkness of the night. So we can think about how let's say we've got light happening at night, like bright screens or bright lights, this can delay that melatonin because melatonin is signaled when it's dark. And this can then push cortisol higher, keeping the stress system activated. And research consistently shows that the disruption of a circadian rhythm can increase things like anxiety, fatigue, gut issues, weight gain, reactivity, emotional issues. And this is such a big piece that's so basic and so simple, like just stepping outside in the morning and basically regulating your lights just with the sun and the moon. So in simple terms, your stress hormones run on a 24-hour cycle, and light is the main thing that sets this cycle. So if the timing is off, everything's going to feel off. Your body's like, I don't know where I am in time and space. Everything has this rhythm. It's so beautiful. It's like nature. Everything has a rhythm. And if the timing is off with our light and our sleep, everything can really feel off and wonky. And this drops us back into a sympathetic state. So when we really work with the light of the natural cycles, this is one of the easiest ways to allow yourself to have a healthy stress response. And this feeds us directly into the next step, which is nature and cleaning up the environment. So step number 5 is all about a clean environment. And when we step into nature and live more naturally and organically, this is such a fast and easy and effective way to shift our nervous system out of stress mode. So there's 2 parts to this step. A clean, natural environment supports our stress system first through direct exposure to nature, to the natural world, to just spending time outside. We have strong evidence that being outdoors lowers cortisol levels, right? Our main stress hormone. It reduces inflammation, it improves our heart rate variability, and increases parasympathetic activity, right? Now you know that's the part of your nervous system responsible for rest and repair. And that's the whole point of this whole podcast today, right? Is helping you understand how to reduce your stress through a bunch of different angles. So even just a few minutes outside can create measurable shifts in calmness, in mood, in mental clarity, in healing and nourishment and grounding and healing holistically and manifesting anything you want, because both of those things, we need to be in a calm state that we can actually pause to think about the future we want to create, to pause in order to heal our gut. So nature itself is a biological regulator. It's so amazing, right? We are one with nature, and it shows, right? It's funny how we have to have like research to back it up, where if you step outside, you feel better. So the second part of this is reducing the irritants in our everyday environment, right? The toxins, the chemicals. So things like synthetic fragrances, conventional cleaning products, Dawn dish soap, pesticides, Roundup, glyphosate, or poor indoor air quality, right? From potentially carpets or paint, or maybe just not having enough airflow in your house. So these don't directly turn on the stress response, but they do increase our overall physiological load. So when your body has to process all this extra stuff, detoxify more aggressively, and deal with this low-grade inflammation. It's hard on the immune system, and our capacity to handle normal everyday stress, it decreases. So it's like adding weight to a backpack, right? The hike doesn't change, but the effort required, it goes up. So by spending more time in nature and reducing unnecessary toxins in your home and in your life and in your food and in your water, you lower that burden and support your nervous system's ability to shift out of stress mode. So step number 6 is downtime, like actual rest. And one of my favorite phrases to really embody this whole step is resting in stillness. So most of us think that we're resting when we're actually stimulating our nervous system. If we're scrolling, if we're multitasking, this constant output and background noise, it keeps the stress response on, even when you're physically still. So real rest requires a break in stimulation. So this could be silence. It could just be closing your eyes for a moment, doing a guided hypnosis. Could be pausing without reaching for your phone, right? Having no phone, no book, no nothing. Just doing one thing at a very slower pace. So these micro pauses signal to your body that the environment is safe, right? It's safe enough to shift gears, down, regulate, calm down into a parasympathetic state. Without these moments, our system gets stuck in go mode. So it's like if you were hiking up a mountain and you were ski touring and you just kept going without ever stopping to catch your breath, eventually your body would start to feel flooded and exhausted, and you have to take a break at some point. So intentional downtime helps our system recalibrate so that we can think clearly again. So some really clean, clear, basic things that we can do here are literally, I've been just laying on the couch, closing my eyes and putting in a guided hypnosis, something really mellow, something really just calming to kind of catch my brain so I don't have to think about anything. And it just guides me along, and I'll do that for 20 to 40 minutes. You can also just put your legs up the wall, put some calm music on. Ideally, we're doing this without our phone, because if we're on our phone, we might be checking emails, we might be scrolling, we might be working. We want to be actually pausing. And so you can get a double effect if you do this out in nature, right? If you do this on the beach, or you do this in the mountains or by a river. We want intentional stillness. And the thing, again, to sum this up, is we want to actually be able to rest in stillness. And if this is super hard for you to actually rest, because sometimes, it can be hard. Like some people I actually can't meditate, I can't sit still. Then just start with the other pieces that we've talked about. And then also what we can do here is just take some stuff off of our schedule and just factor in time to just be at home, catch up on your life, do your laundry, cook yourself some food, really just pause and have some downtime for you. And then this will get easier and easier, because it's actually kind of like a muscle. We have to practice pausing. It's not going to feel natural to all of us, especially when our society is so hustle, go, keep going. So if this is really hard for you, know that it was for me too, and it still is. It's a constant practice. But the more you do it, the more you actually crave it. So I love now dropping into a meditation. I love taking these pauses. It is so nourishing, and it refuels me in such a deep, deep level. And we know that's because I'm allowing my body to tap into rest mode, where things nourish and heal, and we work on our detox at that time. When we're in a parasympathetic state, we're detoxing, we're healing, we're digesting. And if we don't ever give ourselves the capacity to do that, or learn how to pause, when is your body actually going to do that? So this is a practiced thing. So if it's hard for you, I totally get you. I totally see you. I hear you. And just know that it gets easier with time, especially if you incorporate learning about your emotions and learning about how your internal programs and patterns are working and running the show, because this is really where this stuff shows up. When you pause and you have some downtime and actual rest, this is where we get a lot of clarity into what your beliefs are. What are you thinking about yourself when you rest? And that's the beautiful deep work that we can get into to really help the nervous system switch into a parasympathetic calm rest and digest state. Okay, so we are at the last step in the 7 steps to reset your system. And these aren't in any particular order. They're just the 7 steps that I have found to be super helpful with myself and with my clients when we are literally stuck in anxiety and we're stuck in stress mode and we're stuck in all the feelings of being revved up and can't relax. So this last step, this 7th step, is our breath. So breath work is so amazing because it's actually the thing that we can use in the moment. It is one of the fastest ways to shift our nervous system into a calm state. And what I like to think of and how I like to simplify this is a longer exhale activates the vagus nerve and signals to the body that it can downshift. So we can keep it super simple and just say working on a longer exhale will help us switch into a parasympathetic state. So it is literally as simple as making your exhale as twice as long as your inhale. And another tool that you can use is called the physiological sigh. It's a full inhale and a second smaller inhale or another sip in, and then a long, slow exhale. And this resets your internal state in just a few breaths. And these patterns work because your breath is directly wired to your stress pathways. And when we change our breathing, our physiology follows within seconds. So breath is such an easy thing that we have at our fingertips anytime in the day. So again, I like to do one of those two things, whether it's breathing in for 4 and then exhaling for 8, or it's doing the physiological sigh where it's a full inhale and then a smaller inhale and then a long, slow exhale. All right, so this is resetting our internal state in just a few moments, in just a few minutes. We can really do a lot with our nervous system and our internal physiology. So now we can just recap and summarize how to reset your nervous system, right? Because this is the first step to any healing, any manifestation, any change that you want to make. This is the first step in my Design Your Life process where we pause, we relax, we learn how to be still, right? Because this is where everything starts and takes place. So number 1 is fuel, right? We stabilize our body's energy. This is the foundation. I see such good results when people start eating 3 meals a day. They start eating regularly. They bring in more protein, fat, fiber. Maybe the person needs more carbs. And this supports our blood sugar stability, right? This prevents our cortisol from spiking up and going up and down and all around. And it gives your system the raw material and the fuel that it needs to stay regulated. Number 2, minerals, right? Like sodium, potassium, magnesium, working on our calcium levels. This regulates our nerve signaling, our adrenal function, our thyroid, our hormones, our blood sugar, our sleep, our stress. So when minerals are low, the stress response becomes more reactive and harder to shut off. Number 3 is mindset and subconscious and emotional stuff. So your brain, right, reacts to your thoughts and your stored patterns the same way it reacts to real danger. This is such an important concept to understand, that your brain is reacting to your thoughts and stored patterns in the same way it reacts to real danger, right? So old beliefs and old emotional loops can actually keep your stress system activated even when, your life looks quote unquote calm. And this was such a big thing for me. I know I've said this a lot on this podcast, but I literally used to not be able to relax. And it's still a thing I'm working on. Like I have a primed nervous system that is in high alert. And so as I update these internal patterns, I literally feel calmer, less reactive. I'm able to pause and listen. And it's like this overall feeling of peace. And that is what brings us into a parasympathetic state. I can't say enough how deep, deep, deep healing happens with subconscious reprogramming. It's so powerful and so effective. And then step number 4, light and circadian rhythm. Remember light and sleep, the timing that we're awake and we see lightness and darkness. This regulates our cortisol curve, right? We've got the internal 24-hour clock, and morning light helps our stress hormones rise at the right time in a healthy way, while nighttime, we want it to be dark so that we can tap into melatonin and really drop into a deep sleep. We need healthy, regular sleep for healthy circadian rhythm and healthy cortisol and stress response. So when we align our rhythm naturally, the system will calm down. Number 5, we have a natural environment, right? Nature directly lowers our cortisol and increases this parasympathetic activity. And on the opposite, everyday toxins don't directly activate the stress response, but they add to the body's load and make the nervous system more reactive. So when we have more nature, fewer irritants, a clean environment, this leads to a calmer baseline. Number 6, downtime, right? Real rest, time without input or stimulation. This helps our system reset. It is so powerful. These micro pauses, the stillness, just scheduling time for you to reset your life, whether it's like, blocking out 15 minutes in the middle of your morning, or sometimes I will find a really calm guided hypnosis and just drop into that in the middle of a workday. And it's amazing how it just resets my system. I did one before this podcast because I just was like having a hard time getting in the flow. And then I'm like, okay, it's much easier to think when I'm calm. So I just stepped aside and did a little bit of a internal calming practice, took a micro pause and stillness. And then it was so much easier for me to create this. So when we have those micro pauses and the stillness and the intentional slowing down, this gives our nervous system space to shift out of that constant activation. So scheduling downtime into your life. And the last step, the 7th step, is long exhales and the physiological sigh. I'm not a breathwork coach. I'm not a breathwork facilitator, but I do know that the physiology shifts when we use our breath. When we're in a stress state, we're like hyperventilating. That's signaling to the body that there's stress. It's intense. We're like, what's going on? We all know that when we use our breath to calm down, this activates the vagus nerve and signals to the body to downshift out of stress mode. Our breath is one of the fastest ways to change our internal state in real time. And the one thing I will plug in here is if you're super angry and activated, your breath might not actually be the thing that's going to calm you down. You might need to move that emotion through you. So you could do an intense breath, right? Like to get that moving through you. Or there's like the Wim Hof version where it's into the belly, into the chest, out through the mouth, like. But the way I personally like to process my activated emotions is go get some exercise. And that actually, exercise in itself, this is something I didn't put in here, but maybe would be something to talk about in another episode, is people think they're regulating their stress through exercise, but actually exercise is a stressor. So it's a whole nother conversation about cortisol and high cortisol versus low cortisol. So if you're someone who has high cortisol and it's like pumping through you all the time, yes, we can actually use exercise to move those stress hormones through us. Same thing with anger. If we're feeling really triggered and charged, we actually might need to move that through us. And then we can tap into the parasympathetic breath work to calm ourselves down, to understand what was just happening. Why was I triggered? So that's another conversation for another day. I might do a whole episode on emotions, which I think I will. That sounds like a great idea because no one ever taught us how to regulate our emotions. So if you ever feel like, well, Jackie said step number 7 was breath work, but I can't calm myself down when I'm really activated because yeah, you might need to move your body to then calm down. So if you ever are in an activated state, move your body and then use the breath work. Use the long exhales or the physiological sigh to downshift out of stress mode. So number 7 is breath, right? Breath is one of the fastest ways to change our state in real time. So these are the 7 steps to reset your system, to calm down, to activate the pause. This is the first step in my Design Your Life framework. This is where it all begins because, as you now know, this is where the magic happens. So all these 7 steps, they work to bring your body out of that stress mode and back into regulation. And even just when we start to implement a few of these steps, our mind starts to feel much clearer, decisions become much easier, and our energy and our mood stabilizes. And just with those things, imagine how much easier life is. So this isn't about doing this perfect. This is about giving your system the input it needs to feel safe enough to relax. And when our physiology resets, when we can actually tap into this physiological state of the autonomic nervous system, into the parasympathetic state, everything in your life becomes more workable, easier, and we stop reacting and we actually start choosing and we come back to ourselves. And this is really where the nervous system and the life design meet, because once your body feels this way, right, it's regulated through these 7 steps, you finally get access to the part of you that can see clearly, it can choose clearly, can move in new directions, because you can't design a new life, make aligned decisions, or move out of stuckness from stress mode. Your system simply, it just won't let you. But when your physiology resets, your intuition comes back online, your creativity returns. Your next step becomes more obvious instead of overwhelming and chaotic. And this is exactly why I created Your Inner Reset, which is my monthly class and session that helps us all drop into a regulated, grounded state and reconnect with your internal guidance. It's a deeper nervous system reset that many people need before they access that clarity or momentum again, or even if they're trying to heal their body and they keep doing the protocols or the parasite cleanses or whatever, the steps. It's like we're all trying to do too much at once. It's like we kind of just need to pause. And so for those of you who are ready for a bigger shift and want to step into a bigger, more exciting life, whether it's a new direction with your health and your gut and your hormones, or your career or your identity or your relationships, this regulated foundation is what we build on inside Design Your Life. It's where we bring in the subconscious work, the clarity work, balancing our blood sugar, and aligned action so you can actually create the life that's been pulling at you. So if you're feeling stuck or stressed or overwhelmed or unhealthy and you want to move forward with a clear and calm and healthy regulated plan and a happy gut, then come join me for either Your Inner Reset or Design Your Life. And you'll see the notes below for the links and the information. But all of this, just know, if you get anything out of today, just work on the pause. It's the most beautiful first step. And it's the thing that most of us jump over, and it's like we have to keep coming back. And so if this resonated with you, take a screenshot of the show notes and just allow yourself to be reminded of how to actually help your body get into the pause. So also, if this resonated, share this with a friend. Help me out. Spread this podcast around. This freaking podcast, this episode is gold. If we all learned how to use these 7 steps to regulate our nervous system, imagine how freaking awesome this world would be if we weren't moving through the world reactive. We were moving through the world in a paused, calm, inner peace state. Imagine that. It'd be freaking dope. So send this to your friends, share this episode, blow this podcast up so that we can actually get this message out into the world and we're not just using conventional healthcare, and we can start living in a more aligned way connected with nature and connected with our friends, and start stepping into this future that is positive, it is inspiring, and it can be good and positive. It doesn't have to be all gloom and doom, you guys. We can literally change this shit up and move on to a healthy, amazing, freaking dope life. So thank you so much for showing up today. Thank you for being here and supporting this podcast. And if you want the deeper work, you want the deeper healing, come join me for Your Inner Reset. Or if you want the deeper work, come join me for Design Your Life. It's going to be a program opening in the new year. And I will see you on December 30th or something. So right before the new year, you guys, it's coming. 2026. Let's go. See you next time.